Good morning and welcome back to the Sage Sorority. Happy Thursday. How are we all doing, guys? I hope you are having an amazing week, or at the very least, a very cozy one. My name is Chantel Russo. I'm the founder and host of the Sage Sorority. Welcome back for all of my return sages, and welcome to all the new listeners that we have this week. So I've been a busy bee this week. I'm literally go. Festive season is here. It has been super busy for me. I don't know if you guys are feeling it, but I really love it. I'm going to be honest. I think festive season in London is top 2, not 2. And I also think November and most of December is the best social season in London. I absolutely love it. I don't think there's any better time to be in the city. So I just kind of lean into it, and I don't even care if I'm busy. Yesterday was a bit of a joke. I was literally running all around the city and then tucking into a Pret to have a meeting. It was crazy. But yeah, I just kind of lean into it because I know that come the new year, things will really slow down. So I don't mind. And I hope that wherever you are and wherever you're listening from, you are embracing your crazy as well. So today's episode is something that I've thought about in bits and pieces for a while, and I finally kind of just sat down, got my thoughts together, and decided to make an episode about it. So I hope you guys have your tea, your water, your coffee, whether you're commuting or at your desk, and settle in while we discuss. But before we get into it, if you love the show, please take a few seconds to rate and review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. There's no algorithm on Apple and Spotify, so the show literally only gets promoted through subscriptions, word of mouth, and your reviews. That is what it takes to help us to spread the show. So thank you to everyone who's already done that. It really means the world. If you're a Spotify girly, be sure to leave a comment on today's episode. I definitely need to pop in there and see what you guys are chatting about per episode. I'm an Apple girly, so sometimes I forget to go into Spotify to check that. And obviously Apple does not do that. But yeah, anyways, without rambling on, let's get into today's episode. So today we're talking about, as you can tell by the title, attraction versus compatibility versus capacity. These are 3 dynamics that I think really shape adult relationships in very different ways. And you guys know that this pod and where I'm speaking from is always for women in their 30s and 40s. So I'm not talking about dating when you're in college. It's just a very different kind of perspective. And you know that that's not really the baseline here unless I say. I know that we always have new listeners every week, so I just kind of want to articulate that. This is for the grown folks, you know? Anyways, this matters because for women in their 30s and 40s, dating isn't just about chemistry anymore. And although a lot of us might know that instinctually, I think that's right, we might not always be putting that into practice. It also has to be about alignment. It has to be about ease. There's also timing factors for both men and women. And whether someone actually has the emotional bandwidth and lifestyle, I am going to say that 1,000,000 times this episode, skill set for the role that they say they want. And that includes you. I've touched on this a little bit here and there before, I think in episode 6 and in episode 32, but this is a conversation that deserves its own moment. So let's break it down. Okay, so first let's start with attraction. I think that attraction can be very polarizing depending on who you're talking to. And it seems to only be polarizing when we're talking amongst women or referring to women and dating. And I think that it does such a disservice. So hear me and hear me well. Attraction absolutely matters. It is the thing that takes an interaction and makes it romantic instead of platonic. It is what shifts the relationship, the interaction, the person from friends to the potential for something more. It's chemistry, it's presence, it's voice, it's smell, it's energy, it's a smile, it's timing, it's aesthetics, all of it. And yes, in the beginning, attraction does get weighed more heavily. You don't have much data to go off of, and that's kind of your baseline, right? You don't know how this person handles conflict yet. You don't know how they treat their mother. You don't know how they manage money. You don't know how they treat people when no one's waiting. You just know what you know, the vibe. And that is also fine, and that is enough. It is warranted for the step that you're in. But this is what people forget, is that attraction isn't meaningless, but it's just not predictive of long-term partnership, okay? Think about it. You can be deeply attracted to someone whose lifestyle you could never actually live in real life. You can be attracted to someone who mirrors your personality, but has actually no emotional stamina and intelligence of their own. You can meet someone who is magnetic and charming in public, but maybe even abusive or completely disconnected in private. You can feel instant chemistry with someone who has no relationship capacity, and the chemistry will have you into thinking it means more than it does. Another point is you can feel instant chemistry or a vibe or sparkles with someone, but that doesn't mean that they're feeling the same thing on their end as well. And this is something that I stand very firmly on. The beginning of a romantic connection should feel sweet and easy. So I also want to emphasize this. I personally, in my years of living, all my friends and friends of friends and acquaintances, I have never, ever seen a relationship start with chaos or confusion or emotional heaviness or anything of the sort and turn into something healthy and long-term. The beginning should be sweet and easy. Say it with me. The beginning should be sweet and easy. Now, a sweet and easy beginning isn't a guarantee, but early stress for sure is a warning, and you need to tread cautiously. Be radically honest with yourself. So anyways, back to my main point. Yes, attraction matters. It is the spark, but it is not the house that we live in. It is not the structure. And that's where compatibility comes in. Compatibility and lifestyle are things that in my personal life, when I'm talking to my friends, are things that I emphasize over and over and over again. TLDR, most of the time I just believe no one's bad or good. You're just not compatible. Let's talk about compatibility and why I love this word so much. Because I think that this is a part where people can really underweigh and undervalue. And I really think that if you are a woman who identifies as overly kind, overly flexible, quote unquote, a lover girl by heart, this can be a big part that maybe you are turning a blind eye to, or not giving it the due diligence that it deserves. And I understand why. We are really taught and socialized to be adaptable, to be kind. We're taught that love conquers all, that if the chemistry is there, the rest will work itself out. Love will find a way. But in my humble opinion, as your mama Sage on this pod, that is just not how adult relationships function or thrive. Compatibility is not, we both like to travel or we both love dogs. Like, it is so much deeper than that when we are talking about long-term, monogamous, building a life with someone type of partnership. Compatibility is about lifestyle, my favorite word, pace, rhythm, values, worldview, emotional temperature, etc. One of my personal theories for dating is that, like I said earlier, dating for lifestyle should be much higher on women's priority list than it currently is. And when people hear that, they often think money, which that is not the case. It can be part of it, but it's just a part of a much larger pie chart. And not because dating for lifestyle is transactional, it's because lifestyle is where your relationship actually lives. That is what your relationship is. On a regular, boring Tuesday in March or in September, or when you're 28 or 46, whether you have 2 kids and a dog, or 4 kids and a cat, or 0 kids and 0 pets, that is where your lifestyle and relationship actually lives. It's not in the early cute dates. It's not in the fantasy version that you have in your head. It's not in the makeup to breakup. It's not in the great sex. It's in the day-to-day reality of how you both move through the world, both apart and together. If I'm not really making sense, let me give you some real life examples. So, for example, you're someone who moves through the world with pace. You build, you plan, you're ambitious, you're driven, you organize, you execute, and you're with someone who is more laid back. He floats, he delays, he improvises, he drifts. He's a nice guy, but there's no alignment. Over time, there's a high chance that you will feel like you are dragging someone along the ride and someone who didn't ask to be dragged. Another example, you're internally ambitious even if you're not loud about it. He wants comfort, stability, and sameness. He's not wrong, but eventually you will shrink. People rub off on each other. And part of that is inevitable, but part of that is wanted. And when it's not wanted, there can be a lot of friction. Now, you can sit there and say, I'm fine with this trade-off because I have the relationship that I wanted. And that's fine if you are being radically honest with yourself and you truly believe that. But if you are just telling yourself that so that you're not alone and you have a warm bed, that's when some adjustments need to be made. Another example is like fighting, arguing. You process emotions quickly. You want to talk it out. You want to move through it, and then you're done. You know, a little bit of forgetness and you're moving past it. Maybe you're with someone who ruminates for days, weeks, and then suddenly you are the dramatic one when really like you're just expressing yourself normally. Maybe you love a social rhythm. You like date nights out, good conversation, thoughtful weekends with people you care about. city breaks, weekend vacations, and he's a homebody. He's fine with TV, couch, book. Zero curiosity about the world outside of his routine. Is that going to work? You tell me. Over time, there's a high chance that one of you will resent each other, guaranteed. Another example, you're financially aware and future-minded. You want to retire at 55. You want to retire at 60. You want to semi-retire at 43. You plan, you save, you're thinking ahead. He's casual about money, deadlines, timings, and follow through. He doesn't mind working until the day he dies. That mismatch doesn't just affect your finances because it'll become the tone and the underbelly of your relationship. And it won't be his intention, but you will end up having to carry the load or compromise on your own goals. Now, hear me when I say opposites can absolutely attract. But here's the thing. The opposite has to flatter your life, not destabilize it at its core. If he's calm and you're high energy and his calmness grounds you, amazing. Chef's kiss. That is truly a yin to the yang. But if his calm feels like passivity, and your energy is actually drive, and you end up feeling like you're the only one building a life of your dreams, that is not balance. He's burdening you. Compatibility shapes how you feel day to day in the relationship. That is what it is. Calm, stimulated, grounded, ignored, supported, irritated, seen, invisible, loved on. All of it is your compatibility with someone. And look, if you're casually dating, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, none of this needs to be that deep. Have fun, enjoy the connection, make sure you're taking something away from it, like you're learning and you're checking in with yourself. But when you're dating with intention, or you're dating for something long-term, because dating with intention can be a little meh. When you're thinking about partnership, co-creation, maybe even a family, compatibility is something that you cannot bypass. I'm so sorry. You cannot collect $200 and pass go for my Monopoly lovers. Because this is what I've seen happen over and over. Women meet someone with great attraction and maybe decent compatibility in the beginning, and they think, this could work. I can adjust. I can meet him halfway, and maybe you can for a while. But 6 months in, a year in, 2 years in, and you realize that you're the only one adjusting. You're the only one shape-shifting to make this relationship a thing. And he's been doing the same thing this whole time. Compatibility isn't about perfection. I also want to emphasize this. Perfection doesn't exist. It can't exist because no one is perfect. That includes you. It is about whether your natural rhythms and directions support each other or are in conflict, which brings us to our third piece, and honestly, one that gets ignored far too much, and that is capacity. Okay, so now we get to the big one, the one that changes everything, and that is capacity. Capacity is the most important factor in adult relationships, and somehow it is definitely the least discussed. And I want to talk about it thoughtfully and what it could mean for you and what it should mean for you. Capacity, and I'm going to define this as clearly as possible, is someone's actual in real life ability to do the role that they say that they want. Friend, boyfriend, partner, fiance, husband, father, whatever it is. It is not about wanting to be those things. And it is not about the fantasy and the idealism of being those things. It's about having the emotional intelligence, the psychological maturity, the logistical follow through, and the lifestyle development required to actually be those things, to be that person. And here's where I really need you guys to hear me. And I've said this before, I think on TikTok, so I may be wrong. Just because he's a good boyfriend doesn't mean he'd be a good husband. And just because he's a good husband doesn't mean he'd be a good father. I'm sorry. I just really believe in my low-key theory, high-key fact. And I have a few of them actually, but that one is one of the good ones. Each role just requires a completely different skill set. And I think we need to know and be honest with ourselves that just because time spent does not equal that role. Like, you shouldn't get these promotions just because you've been there long enough. It doesn't work like that. Each role, and most people don't talk about this because it feels unromantic. This is not in our storybooks. This is not in our Disney movies. These are not in our rom-coms. It feels transactional. It feels harsh. But I don't think it is. I really don't. I think it's realistic. And honestly, I also think it's kind because we need to accept people for who they are and who they're showing up as, not who they want to be. Because when you understand capacity, you will not blame yourself for things that are not about you. Here are some examples. So, good boyfriend, but not a good husband. You're going on great dates. He's affectionate. He's fun. He makes you laugh. The vibe is good. You feel seen in the moment. But he can't really navigate conflict without shutting down. He has no real follow through. Things seem to be a bit sparse in the communication. No real planning. Maybe he has stability. Maybe he doesn't. He doesn't really want to think 3 to 6 months ahead, let alone 6 years. Amazing boyfriend energy. You're having a great time, of course. But husband capacity, he's not there. Good husband, not an active or present. Partner, responsible, loyal, organized, pays the bills on time. He keeps the household running. He's dependable, but low emotional bandwidth. He can help maintain a home, but he lacks a lot of empathy. He can't attune to a child's needs. His ego maybe needs a little bit of curbing. Fatherhood requires patience, softness, spontaneity, play, and real adaptability. Children are not adults. Like, children are not small adults, you know? And all the mothers out there that are listening know that. But if you're a father or soon to be a father listening, it's really important to emphasize, because a lot of men will hear me say that and say, well, duh. But also, what does that look like IRL? It's completely different skills. And if that man doesn't have them, you will end up being the only emotional available parent in the house. And he will think he's doing a great job simply because he's there. And we all know now, because we've been living on this earth long enough and on social and hearing so many women's testimonies, that is just not good enough. And that does not a good father make. So maybe he's a good provider, but he's not a good partner. Financially supportive, successful, reliable. Maybe he's a little dutiful. He'll take care of things. The lifestyle is stable. Things are not up and down, pretty even keeled, but emotionally absent. He's avoidant. He can maintain the structure of your life, but the emotional tone of your household is nowhere to be found. And over time, you will feel like you two are more of co-managers than wife and husband, and frankly, lovers, which is also really important. Here's the part I will say also that's maybe hard to accept sometimes. Capacity isn't necessarily about effort. And it's also not about love. Someone can love you deeply and care for you deeply and still not have the capacity for the relationship that you need. Trust and believe that this is true. And this is why I think sometimes it can really mind fuck with women, because they're like, he loves me. I know he cares for me. Yes, he does. I don't doubt that, and neither do you, and neither does he. But that still doesn't mean he's at the level to give you what you want. So there's only one decision to be made. Are you going to go down at his level because he showed that he can't meet you at yours? And this is why you can genuinely love many people in your lifetime, but only a few will have the capacity for the version of partnership that you actually want in that time and space. And that is not cynical. It's just true. Capacity also shifts with timing. Someone might not have the capacity for fatherhood at 28 or 18, but they do at 35 or they do at 45. Someone might have the capacity for commitment now, but they didn't 2 years ago. And sometimes someone will never develop the capacity you're hoping for, no matter how much time you give them. And I really believe that this is where women get stuck, because we are taught, convinced, and coerced into seeing a man's potential. We are taught to nurture, to wait, to plan, to believe. So we stay in relationships with men who want to be good partners, but don't actually have the capacity to be, or frankly, the desire. And then we tell ourselves, he's trying, he loves me, things will get better. Maybe it'll get better when we're in a relationship. Maybe it'll get better when we live together. Maybe it'll get better when we get married. Maybe it'll get better when we have kids. For 99% of the time and people, that is not the case. And for your own sanity, you should consider yourself to be the rule, not the exception. Capacity is not built through osmosis. It's built through self-awareness, intentional growth, probably a little bit of therapy, for being honest, a whole heap of life experience, empathy, and sometimes it's just time and maturity. So the question that you need to ask yourself, not just once, guys, but regularly, does this person have the capacity for the role I need them to play right now? Not in a year, not when things settle down, not after we move in together or get engaged or have a baby. Right now. Because if the answer is no, or you're wildly unsure, and you stay anyway hoping it'll change, you are not dating the person in front of you. You are dating a projection. You are dating a fantasy. You are dating the man not in front of you, the one that's in your mind. And truth be told, I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, it's not fair to you and it's not fair to him. Had to get a little firm there, but you know it's out of love. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, We're going to bring it all together and recap. Attraction is the spark. It's what makes you want to be close to someone, but it's not predictive of partnership. Compatibility is the structure. It's the house that we play in. It's whether your lives, rhythms, values actually support each other day to day. And capacity is the readiness. That is the grit. That is the bones. That is the foundation. It is the underbelly. It's whether this person can actually show up for the relationship you're trying to build, the role that they say they want, not theoretically, but functionally in reality. You need all three, not just one, not just two, but you need all three. This is the relationship trifecta. That is when a relationship feels like a true partnership, and maybe not every day is perfect, but every day you're happy to be with this person. I hope that makes sense. I want you guys to be able to use this framework without driving yourself crazy, because I don't want you to be going out on dates or in your relationship and turning into a robot. It's highly unattractive, by the way. I don't want you to overanalyze every interaction and every date and bombard him with questions. You don't need to make a spreadsheet. The goal here is not to become hyper analytical or worse, cold and bitter. None of that is cute. The goal is just to become clear. You guys got to stand on business. Today, tomorrow, forever. And this is what I've noticed most of the time, that sometimes when we over-index on one of the three, for example, attraction heavy, low compatibility. You feel the spark, the chemistry is undeniable, but your lives don't actually fit together. You're constantly negotiating basics that should really feel natural. Then maybe you have compatibility heavy, but no attraction. On paper, it makes sense. We all know that. He's good on paper. Your values align, your lifestyles match. Maybe he's the right religion. Maybe he's the right height. But there's no pull. There's no chemistry, and you're hoping it'll grow. And it might, but you also have to be realistic with yourself that it might not. And then there's attraction and compatibility, but zero capacity. And I think this is probably the least obvious of the three, and probably the most dangerous, because this is the one that tricks you in your mind for the longest, because things feel right? You're drawn to him, your lives align, and you think this is it. But he doesn't have the emotional capacity and maturity, the follow through, or the readiness to actually build what you're trying to create. And in my experience, I find that a lot of women that are in this situation, attraction and compatibility with zero capacity, often don't find this out until marriage. Because again, stakes are much higher. And like I said, all of these things matter. They just matter at different weights at different stages. Attraction opens the door. It's what gets you interested. It's what makes you say yes to the first date, the second date, the third date, the hot, sexy kiss in the car or behind the bar. It's let's see where this goes. Compatibility builds the foundation. It's what makes the relationship feel easy day to day. It's whether your rhythms support each other or constantly clash. And then finally, capacity determines what the structure can hold long term. It's whether this person can actually show up for marriage, for long-term partnership, for monogamy, for parenthood, whatever it is that you guys are building towards. And the thing is, as my friend likes to say, and I have echoed many times, you can't skip any of them. You can't skip steps. You also don't need to have perfect clarity on all three by date 2. Things unfold over time, and that's okay. Only you can decide how long you're willing to wait. On that note, I briefly want to touch on dating for potential. So I want to add something here because women rarely hear this, I think, from an honest place, and I think that it matters. You can date for potential if you want to, right? Listen, dating is always a risk. There is no way around that. You never know for certain how things are going to turn out. You just don't. Dating for potential is simply a risk with another layer. You're betting on growth that hasn't happened yet. Maybe you feel you have proof. Maybe you don't. I don't know. If you choose that, that is your prerogative. That is your walk to walk. That is your choice, my love. But what I need from you is to be radically honest with yourself about a few things, but I'll give you 3. 1, your timeline. Men grow on you. How long are you willing to wait for the growth that you're hoping to see? 6 months, a week, a year, 2 years, after marriage? Be specific. Shit, write it down in your journal if you need to. Number 2, your own sense of hope. What are you actually hoping will change? Is it realistic? I know I kind of hate that word sometimes, but in this context, I think it fits. Is it realistic? Is it something he's actively working on? Or is it just something you are hoping for? Those are very different things. Again, TLDR, we need to be very clear with ourselves. We need to be dating the man in front of us, not the ones in our head. Okay. Number 3, your exit plan. If the growth doesn't materialize for whatever reason, what are you going to do? Are you willing to actually leave? Or are you someone who's going to move the goalposts and give it a little bit more time? Again, be honest with yourself. Write it in your journal. Speak to your therapist. Leave yourself a voice note. You don't have to share it with everyone, but be honest with yourself. Do not pump fake and posture about your relationship. Not only is it extremely unbecoming, it in very insidious ways chips at your own self-worth and self-respect. Be radically honest with yourself about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how long you're willing to do it for. This is not about being cold or transactional. It's truly about being kind to yourself. First and foremost, I want the girls to do whatever the girls want to do, but I want the women to be radically honest with themselves and kind to themselves, even if that means making tough calls. Because the women who suffer the most in relationships aren't the ones who leave too early. Sorry, survey says no. It's the ones who stay too long. And any woman who's listening to this that has been in a relationship where she knows she overstayed when she should have left is nodding and shaking her head, hoping that someone will become who they need them to be, hoping that he will get closer to the image that you have in your head instead of being radically honest with yourself about the man that you're seeing once a week that is in front of you, that is in your bed. Hope is a beautiful thing, but hope without boundaries is just foolish. And one more thing, I also want to normalize it's okay to walk away from someone you love if the compatibility or capacity isn't there. It is completely okay. Our culture romanticizes the idea of love conquers all, especially for women. I talked about this earlier. And of course, love matters, right? We come from love. We are love. I believe that. But love doesn't solve mismatched lifestyles. Love doesn't pay your taxes. Love doesn't get you $300K out of debt when your husband spent it on DraftKings. I saw an article about this the other day and I was like, oh my gosh. It doesn't create emotional bandwidth that isn't there. It doesn't fast track someone's personal development either. You can love someone and still recognize that the relationship won't work. And that's not a failure. That's you being wildly mature, not only for yourself, but for them as well. And it's one of the kindest things you can do. I hope this helps. Okay, so in closing, that is your relationship trifecta. That is the framework. Attraction, compatibility, capacity. This isn't about performing worthiness like we talked about earlier or analyzing men like they're some project because they're not. It's not about being perfect or having it all figured out because you probably never will. It's about understanding why some connections feel electric but unstable, why others feel grounding but very flat, and why some feel so fucking promising, like you're just almost there, but it can never really turn into anything that holds you properly. When you understand the difference between these 3 things, you, one, will stop blaming yourself for relationships that were never going to work anyways. And you stop trying to force attraction that isn't there. You will also stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's pace. And most important, you stop waiting for someone to grow into a version of themselves that they are not ready to become. Growth is personal. It can't be rushed. You just get clearer about what you're feeling, what you need, and what's actually in front of you. Can't emphasize that enough. And the clarity, my sisters in Christ, is where your power truly, truly lives. If you loved this episode, please take 10 seconds to leave a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. We talked about this earlier in the pod, but now you've had time to listen to the episode. So if you loved it, you know how to share it. Send it to a friend who's in her dating era, like I always say. Post it on Instagram stories and tag me where you're listening from. I love to see where you guys are listening from. It genuinely helps the show grow. I've got big goals for the Sage Sorority in 2026, and I would love all of your help in achieving it. And it helps this community thrive and thrive. I read every single one of your messages, DMs, emails, and anonymous questions. They mean the world to me. And as always, definitely send in your questions for AMA. I definitely want to do one before the end of the year. Anything, dating, beauty, friendship, sex, philosophy, self-concept, whatever's on your mind. I love hearing from you. I'm Chantel, your founder and host of the Sage Sorority podcast. I'm here every Thursday in your ears, on your commute, or at your desk. I will talk to you guys next week. Have an amazing week, an amazing weekend. Take care of yourselves. Bye.